Greetings, comrades. My name is Gigantles, and as you can hear from my voice, or you may, maybe you can, I'm not sure. I've uh, I've almost recovered from my cold or flu, whatever. And you may say, hold on, didn't you say that you were almost recovered last week? I know, but for some reason, the cough I had has now transitioned into like some sort of a dry cough, which means that sometimes I just get the urge to. Ever since that day last week, I've for some reason gotten the urge to just cough randomly, and it's been really irritating because on one hand, I want to be able to attend lectures again and be able to go out in public, but I'm unable to generally because of the danger of me just breaking out in a coughing fit. So it's a bit irritating how my cold has now transitioned into a much longer lasting dry cough. And I am taking appropriate medication to deal with that, but it's still a bit of a strain on my vocal cords, which is one of the reasons why I'm going to try and keep this video relatively short, because otherwise, by the time I finish this, I'm going to be in a coughing fit for a while. It's fun being up here, it's fun getting exposed to new strains of the flu, and instead of being fine within a day, I'm now being affected like this for maybe almost 3 weeks. I just hope my cold finishes soon, but hopefully you guys, wherever you are, to deal with your various flus and colds in this season relatively quickly. The main point about this video, though, is about the availability of confession, as you can see from the title of the video. And the reason why is because, unfortunately, due to my cold, I've been unable to attend. I've been unable to go to mass for the last 2 weeks. And some of you may say I should just tough it out and go anyway, but I'm trying to say this while still being sensitive. At least sensitive to my critics. I haven't been able to go to confession out of the combined danger of making my condition worse, especially because when I first contracted my flu or cold, whatever, it was on like Friday. So by Sunday, I was not in a very good position, and if I'd gone to mass, there was no guarantee I wouldn't have collapsed walking there because of the cold combined with my lightheadedness and everything. And then there was also the danger of exposing people in the mass to my cold. And my cathedral isn't, because I go to a cathedral here, my cathedral isn't, it doesn't have central heating turned on right now. And the last thing I need is to just be coughing and sneezing throughout the entirety of the mass. So combining that with trying to help me get over my cold quickly, I haven't been able to go to mass for the last couple of weeks. And that's also resulted in me not being able to go to confession for the last couple of weeks. Now, I would like to go to confession because without it, I won't be able to go. I wouldn't be able to be in a state of grace, so I can go receive communion in the mass. But whilst mass occurs every day in my diocese, confession doesn't. Typically, I would go to confession on Sunday just before mass. Like, I go to the mass half an hour. I go to the cathedral, but half an hour before the mass started, and wait for a priest and have confession before the mass. But the priests keep telling me to go to confession like on Saturday. But the thing is, as you can see from today, right now is Saturday, and I tried to go to confession this morning, but for some reason the church was having a service or something, so I wasn't able to go to confession at the appointed time. And the only other time I can go to confession in my cathedral is like 6 o'clock Sunday, which is a bit late to go to confession for a mass on Sunday to fulfill the Sunday Holy Day of obligation. Which means I'm probably going to have to go to mass tomorrow morning and irritate the priests again by having a confession before the mass. But looking at this really irritating schedule of confession, it reminded me about the problem of the availability of confession compared to the number of people who receive the Holy Communion not in a state of grace. Because I know there's a lot of memes and articles talking about how people go to mass, or rather the ratio of people who go to receive communion compared to the people who go to confession is just widely unbalanced. But we need to realize that part of that isn't just because people refuse to go to confession nowadays, but also because they can't. which sort of undermines their desire to go to confession. And part of that is due to the availability of confession. In fact, I saw a specific meme about this on Catholic Memes, the Facebook page, which it talked about how the availability of confession, the time period available on specific days is just unreasonable for people. And I know I was exaggerating a little bit, but again, when I look at the specifically scheduled time slots for specifically available time slots for confession in my cathedral, it's like 1.5 hours every week, and it's only on the weekends. Sorry, okay, I almost had a coughing fit there. I'm not sure if we can even go to confession on weekdays, and on the weekends. It just seems that the hours available for confession are they're just somewhat unreasonable, or they're occupied by other things, which has resulted in the general Catholic public being unable to attend confession. And so they think, oh well, I would have gone to confession anyway, so I'll just go to mass and choose to go to confession at a later date, which then undermines the whole purpose of the sacrament of penance and confession. So I'm not trying to say this as an excuse for me to get out of going to confession or mass, or even just even adopting a similar approach, saying I'll just go to confession another week. I'm not going to go to mass and receive communion until I get the sacrament of confession. And that doesn't mean I'm going to just try and avoid going to church at all. I will go to church, but I'm not going to receive communion until I get that confession. And I will have to go on Sunday, tomorrow. I'll go early as usual and just irritate the priests and get to confession before mass. And if they ask, why didn't you go to confession on Saturday? Maybe I'll try and get an explanation from them. But I think this does reflect the wider problem with the availability of confession prior to mass. Because the last thing I want to do is irritate the priests just before mass to go to confession, because to have a confession, because I know they have to prepare for mass and everything. And I know that priests are also busy, even outside of mass. They are busy doing other things. But I don't think I'm the only person who recognizes this combined problem with a lack of desire to go to confession, which is somewhat influenced by the unavailability of time slots for confession, or the reasonability of hours to go to confession. And I do hope that as we get further away from the pandemic and lockdowns and everything, confession becomes more widely available to the general public, and that I'm able to go to confession at more reasonable times and not put pressure on the priest to hear my confession before mass, and also just be able to attend confession at more reasonable hours for me. Because although I'm relatively free on the weekends, it's still unreasonable to fulfill a holy day of obligation. Wrong term. It's still unreasonable to fulfill the Sunday obligation if the only available slot for confession you have is in the evening of that same day. Because by that point in time, after 6, you're doing a vigil mass for Monday, and you're not fulfilling the Sunday obligation. So hopefully you guys out there have it easier. You're able to go to confession when you want, and it's a lot more available than in other places like the one I'm describing at. But otherwise, that's it pretty much for this week. So my cold has transitioned into a long-term irritating cough, and there's been some problems with the availability of confession, which I hope you guys don't have. And I'm going to end up annoying my priest tomorrow morning when I try to go to confession, but it's all for the sake of my soul, and hopefully he, despite his irritation, understands that. So have a good weekend, all of you. God bless you all. See you in the next video, comrades. Until then.